I did not anticipate that cohabiting with my new husband David and his son Michael would evolve into a situation far more intricate than merely merging our lives. Marrying David was among the most advantageous moves I have made. Although it entailed unforeseen alterations, Michael had recently turned 21, and upon completing his education he was contemplating his future endeavors while David was occupied with business trips, leaving me to spend considerable time alone with my stepson. Our relationship had become exceedingly comfortable, perhaps excessively so. We had an excellent rapport, and his presence was comfortable. Michael exhibited thoughtfulness and maturity beyond his years, and there was initially no palpable tension. I attributed this to his kindness and consideration. However, as time progressed, subtle moments arose that prompted me to question whether there was something deeper, something neither of us was prepared to acknowledge. This culminated one morning when I was alone in the house preparing for a tranquil day, while David was away on a work trip. As I completed my morning routine in the bathroom, the sound of the shower lingers in the air with steam curling down the mirrors. I was engrossed in contemplation, reflecting on the talk I had with Michael the previous night. It was ostensibly benign, centered on his future and aspirations, but there was a discernible look in his eyes, a reluctance that I could not dismiss. That morning, as I was at the bathroom sink drying my hair, I heard a tap on the door, followed by Michael's voice, soft yet gentle, asking, "Are you in there?" I blinked, astonished that Michael typically did not knock on the restroom door, particularly at this early hour. I observed my reflection briefly before turning towards the door. "Indeed, my Michael, I am present. What is occurring?" Above, a little delay ensued, and I perceived him adjusting on the opposite side. "I apologize for the interruption, but I must retrieve an item from the restroom. May I enter for a little moment?" I faltered. In the vapor, the air remained heavy, and I was enveloped in a thin towel, my hair moist from the shower. Nonetheless, Michael's voice was sufficiently innocent, and it was not uncommon for him to require assistance. I promptly responded, attempting to maintain a nonchalant tone. "Enter. The door is ajar." Gradually, Michael entered. He was attired in sweatpants, his hair disheveled, as though he had just arisen. He cast a peek at me before swiftly redirecting his attention to the cabinet. As he rummaged through it in quest of his required item, I redirected my attention to the mirror, feigning concentration on drying my hair. However, I could not ignore the palpable tension in the atmosphere between us. His movements within the area were subtle yet unmistakable as his gaze rested on me for a minute longer than customary, before diverting. This was sufficient to accelerate my pulse, and after a little interval I heard him cease his rummaging. "Understood," he remarked softly, brandishing a bottle of aspirin. Yet rather than depart it, he remained, his eyes returning to me. "Are you preparing for something?" I answered that I was only beginning my day, casting a glance in his direction, while attempting to maintain an air of normality. He shrugged and leaned against the counter, the tension in the room escalating with each moment I remain uncertain about your appearance. The statement surprised me, so I turned to confront him. I was still wrapped in a towel when I met his gaze. There was an intensity and curiosity in his eyes that I had not previously encountered, causing my breath to catch. I inquired, my voice softer than I intended. Michael swallowed momentarily, glancing away before returning his gaze to me. "I don't know, it's difficult to articulate," he replied. I was uncertain of what to articulate, as the quiet between us intensified. The atmosphere seemed dense, laden with an unexpressed tension that I was unable to traverse. This was Michael, my stepson. I ought not to feel this way, nor should I be positioned here, torn between the desire to disregard the moment and the necessity to recognize the unfolding situation. Before I could articulate anything, Michael advanced, diminishing the space between us. My pulse raced as I observed him, uncertain of his next move. He halted within a few feet away. His gaze was fixed upon me. He expressed his Apologies if this seemed peculiar. His speech was little above a whisper. Although I have been experiencing something recently, and I am uncertain if it is solely my perception, but my breath caught. I was uncertain of what to articulate, or how to react. I too had sensed the gradual transformation in our connection as we appeared to be developing a closeness that transcended mere familial bonds. Michael, I began to speak with a tiny tremor in my voice. I was uncertain of the cause, however. Before I could complete my thought, he moved even closer, his palm softly grazing my arm. The contact was gentle and hesitant, yet it transmitted a surge of energy through my being. I was exhilarated, breathless, as I gazed at him. My heart beating. In that instant, I realized we had transgressed a boundary, unforeseen yet long in the making. I acknowledged that this is an incorrect, Michael, he muttered, his palm resting on my arm. However, cannot control my emotions. I was rendered speechless. The gravity of the situation was overpowering. I could only gaze at him, my thoughts racing beyond comprehension. This was my stepson, David's son, yet the bond one felt towards him was inescapable. I must depart, I stated, suddenly retreating, severing our connection. My voice trembled. I could sense the warmth ascending in my cheeks. Michael nodded, indicating his emotions. In anguish, he murmured an apology. I did not intend to, I interjected, attempting to compose myself, stating that we would converse later, without awaiting a reply. I evaded him and swiftly exited the restroom, my thoughts a tumult of uncertainty, remorse, and an unacknowledged emotion. Upon closing the door to my bedroom, I slumped against it, my pulse racing in my chest. What has just transpired? How had events progressed so rapidly? And more crucially, what actions would I take now that I recognized nothing concrete had transpired? Not yet, but I was engulfed in a complete haze. Uncertain about my next course of action, I spent the remainder of the day attempting to feign normally. I occupied myself with domestic tasks and errands to distract from the bathroom encounter, but I could not dispel the recollection of Michael's proximity, the sensation of his touch, or the unprecedented expression in his eyes. This was not the intended outcome. I married David, and Michael was his son, my stepson. Our partnership was intended to be uncomplicated, familial, yet at some point the dynamics between us had altered, and I remained oblivious until it was too late. I was alone in the house for the majority of the day, while David was on one of his customary business trips, and Michael had departed shortly after our interaction, leaving me to grapple with my thoughts in the oppressive silence of the house, which felt suffocating, compelling me to confront the reality of the situation. I found myself incessantly replaying the moment in my mind, our proximity, the exhilaration induced by his remarks, and the persistent attraction I felt toward him. Intensified as dusk approached. The strain in my chest had only escalated. I had not received any communication from Michael throughout the day, and a part of me experienced relief. I was uncertain. I was uncertain how to confront him after the incident, and I was at a loss for words. Should he mention it? However, part of me which I endeavored to suppress longed for him. I found myself seated on the couch with a half-empty glass of wine. I heard the front door open, my heart racing. Michael entered, his expression unreadable, and we sat in tense silence before he spoke, his voice hesitant. I needed fresh air, he explained, avoiding my gaze. His presence was different, mature, confident, stirring emotions I didn't want to confront. I sense a connection between us, he admitted, breaking the silence. His words sent chills through me, and though I knew it was wrong, I couldn't deny the tension that had been building between us. Michael, I stammered, this isn't right. You're David's son. He stepped closer. I know, but it doesn't change how I feel. His warmth enveloped me as he took my hand. Despite my better judgment, I couldn't pull away. The kiss was hesitant yet electric, years of suppressed emotions coming to the surface. When we broke apart, both breathless, the weight of our actions settled. What now? he whispered, his tone uncertain. I had no answer. Only the realization that we couldn't go back to pretending nothing had changed. I knew our relationship had changed forever, but as I held his hand, I couldn't imagine going back. This isn't over, I said softly, adding, but we'll figure it out. He smiled, and for the first time, I felt a sense of calm. In the following days, moments between Michael and me were charged with unspoken feelings. Though we'd crossed a line, there was relief in finally confronting the tension that had been building for weeks. With David away, our interactions took on new meaning, but the weight of secrecy loomed over us. One evening, as the sun set, Michael asked, "Have you thought about what this means for us?" I admitted I had, but didn't know the answers. His feelings were clear, yet the complexity of the situation tied my emotions in knots. I care for you, I confessed, but there's David to consider. Michael understood, but couldn't deny the connection between us. Despite knowing we couldn't continue like this, our feelings wouldn't be silenced. David's return brought a palpable tension. Though we tried to act normal, every glance exchanged with Michael was heavy with meaning. Alone with him one evening, I finally said, "We can't keep this from David. It's unfair to him." Michael agreed, though the pain in his eyes was evident. We resolved to take a step back, giving ourselves time to reflect. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Though unsure of the future, I found solace in the belief that we'd face whatever came together. For now, honesty and space were our only path forward, even if it meant navigating heartbreak and uncertainty.